I have it in my window.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody, for your interest. We have at least one person attending remotely, and we have 7 of us here. So I think we can go forward. I'm calling this meeting to order. This is the beginning of our long and arduous budget process. And tonight we have a pretty busy agenda, so I am hoping that we can allow Lisa to get through her initial presentation without asking questions. And with that, I'd like to introduce our interim county administrator, Lisa Holmes, to present her recommended budget.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm going to start. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to start by sharing my screen. Let's see. I'm assuming you can all see that, the starter page, 2020 recommended budget. Okay. I'm just going to take it from here then. So the 2022 recommended budget, this is kind of the nutshell version of it on this page. It's a $194 million budget balanced with a property tax levy increase of 2.7%, which falls below our 2022 estimated tax cap, which is 7.42%. If approved, this budget would add approximately $42 to the tax bill of a median home valued at $205,000. This budget also includes a solid waste annual fee increase of $5, so it raises it from $70 to $75. So I just want to back up for a minute and go over something that I covered at last week's legislature meeting really briefly. And that's to say that back in April of 2021, the financial goal approved by the legislature included a maintenance of effort budget, which would result in 1.89% levy growth over the 2021 budget. And departments and agencies were assigned those same fiscal target in 2022 that they had in 2021 and instructed to submit any additional expenditures as over target requests. Prior to this budget submission here, some departments experienced some critical staffing issues, which necessitated mid-year requests to the legislature for additional or restored staffing. And that resulted in an additional 5.5 FTEs, full-time equivalents, being approved mid-year, and the adjustment of those respective departments' fiscal targets. So with that addition of those 5.5 FTEs, the resulting levy growth for a maintenance of effort budget in 2022 grew to 2.73%. So that's what this adjusted target is referring to. And this recommended budget falls slightly below that adjusted target. Next, I'm just going to go through some indicators and forecasts that inform the decision making for the 2022 budget. Starting with consumer confidence. This graph shows a slow recovery of U.S. consumer confidence following the pandemic shutdowns of 2020. Next, looking at inflation rates from July of last year to this year, inflation is 5.4%. So we're most certainly seeing a bump in inflation. The price increases of 2021 have been at a level that we haven't experienced in recent times, but we believe there is evidence to support that this current bump in inflation is transitory and not indicative of a core rise in the price of goods and services. Still, it's something to be aware of, as it can impact our ability to bid out projects and procure certain items within budget. that lasts for long term. Also looking at unemployment rates, as of July 21st, they have declined overall over the last year. Tompkins County's unemployment rates are lower in comparison with that in the Southern Tier region and the rest of New York State. And as of July 2021, our unemployment rate was 4.6%, which is among the lowest in the state. It's not the lowest. Hamilton County, once again, outranks us in unemployment as well as vaccination rates. But so we're the 6th lowest unemployment rate in New York State. Some other items to be aware of around unemployment. The expanded unemployment benefit that was in place throughout the pandemic has prevented some spending declines for people who lost their jobs and provided support to the overall economy. Those expanded and extended unemployment insurance benefits ended on September 6th. Also, if you were unemployed prior to August 9th, you had a 13-week extension of benefits in addition to the 25 or 26-week standard unemployment benefit. As of August 9th and after, that extended unemployment 13-week extension of benefits ended. So, and then as of September 6th, people on unemployment have lost the additional $300 a weekly supplement. They will still receive weekly benefits. So these issues are likely to impact unemployment rates going forward. Locally, I'm aware through our the services that we provide, there are still not a lot of employment seekers rather. A lot of people are choosing to stay out of the workforce, and there's a great deal of demand now to fill open positions. This is spanning across industries and spanning across entry-level, mid-level, and higher-level positions within organizations. We're certainly seeing it here in the county as an employer. And we know employers are making some bold moves to try to attract and retain workers. So another indicator of need certainly are Tompkins County SNAP cases or a food stamp. Our caseloads are generally declining. There was you can see a little bit of a bump during the pandemic upswing, but that's been followed by a bit of a decline or plateau. Still, we're 44% higher than we were pre-recession in 2008. TANF cases, TANF standing for Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. TANF cases continue to decline. They're down 47% from January 2008. And down 27% from January 2019. With TANF, it's a federal benefit. There is no local cost to this, but it is a 5-year lifetime benefit. After an individual, if an individual is eligible for TANF and is on it for over 5 years, they transition to safety net. Safety net is a longer-term economic assistance benefit, and it is at a 71% local expense. We've seen a decrease in TANF or safety net cases since mid-2020. And these are, looking at this graph in tandem, it shows both the TANF and safety net cases together. While you can see a trend of overall decline in both, there is a steeper decline in TANF than safety net, showing the shift of cases to safety net, where there is a 71% local cost. Some of the major budget drivers for the 2022 budget on the revenue side of things, sales tax revenues, the American Rescue Plan funds, as well as casino revenues. And on the expenditure side of things, our capital program reinvestment, labor costs, and increases in mandates. So I'll be going over all of these things next. Starting with sales tax projections. So as we know, sales tax is a major budget driver, the second largest revenue in the county budget after property tax. And in order to get to a sales tax projection for 2022, we first have to take an educated guess as to how we'll finish 2021 and further guess how what conditions are going to be like going forward. So based on the slides we just went through regarding the economic indicators, particularly unemployment, and also the unknown trajectory of COVID-19 and its variants, I think it's safe to say that economic recovery is still rather unpredictable. Sales tax is also notoriously difficult to forecast. So we're taking a conservative approach to projecting sales tax for the remainder of 2021 and thus 2022. We're assuming that 2021 finishes with 11% growth over 2020, and that our 2022 budget includes only slight growth over that projection. So we know sales tax has been exceeding expectations in 2021. For that, we're grateful, but we want to be cautious moving forward into 2022 with the ending of the expanded uninsurance and the other unknowns with the COVID-19 variant and the economy. Looking at our taxable assessed value over time, there has been just tremendous growth in Tompkins County's assessed values over the past several years, 36% growth over the last 10 years. However, over the last year, the rate of growth slowed to 1.8%. I had a conversation with Jay Franklin, our assessment director. This is due in large part to the small number of changes made to the assessment rolls during over the last year during COVID, and due to the uncertainties of COVID and how it would impact the market. Next year, our assessment department expects that this is going to be changing dramatically with all the movement in the real estate market and the number of changes being made to the assessment rolls. Next, just to touch upon the American Rescue Plan Act. This is a major source of aid, one-time aid in our 2022 budget is the American Rescue Act funds. Tompkins County received $19.8 million in Arpa funds. Again, these are one-time funds for specific uses, and specific rules and guidelines apply to them. In July of this year, the legislature resolved to claim 100% of the Arpa funds as lost revenue for government services and directed 75% of those funds toward capital projects. And the remainder for one-time uses. So I'll be touching more on the American Rescue Plan funds throughout this presentation and the capital presentation. Next, just touching on casino revenue. It's a relatively new source of revenue for the county since 2018. Our 2019 actual revenue was $2 million. Our receipts for 7 months in the current year are close to $1 million. And so we're budgeting $1.75 million for 2022, and that's up from the 2021 target based on this year's projections. Another budget driver on the expense side is our capital plan and investment strategy. The county is in the midst of a robust period of capital investment to meet its space management, emergency services, information technology, energy, and other needs. And a cornerstone of the capital plan is a financial strategy to achieve net zero emissions by 2027. It also allocates, as we said, 75% or about $14.9 million of ARPA funds on cash for capital projects. And finally, it puts us back on a regular allocation of levy dollars to support capital investment. For 2022, I'm recommending a 0.5% of the property tax levy, or 6.37 million towards the capital program. And again, I'll be getting into more of the details of that in the capital presentation that's coming next. So stay tuned for that. Next, I'm talking about labor costs and projected wage growth. We have currently one current contract with our blue collar unit in place for 2022. We do have a lot underway, though. We currently have a tentative agreement with the white collar unit, and there will be a vote on the coming weeks, which could lead to another contract, fingers crossed. There's also a draft interest arbitration decision pending with Road Patrol, which only covers 2 years. But in addition to that, we're diligently working on a multi-year agreement, which would be in the interest of all of the parties to get that agreement current with our Road Patrol division. So both white collar and Road Patrol could be settled within this year and in place for 2022. Our corrections unit has also expressed an interest in returning to the table, and we'll be working on that as well. But our budget takes into account the potential costs of these contracts, and we will continue to work diligently to get our labor contracts current with all units. More on labor costs and our workforce costs. In terms of restoring positions or restructuring staffing, our 2022 budget restores 34 positions across 17 departments. Just want to point out, not every new position required an over target request. Some departments received different funding streams or were able to restructure without requesting additional funds. Though of the positions that were requested as over target requests, 13 were recommended in the target and 13 were recommended as one-time or multi-year one-time. And then another side of the labor costs are fringe costs. Our healthcare premiums are going to be going up 5% in 2022 through the Greater Tompkins Municipal Health Consortium, which is, they've been very effective in managing our health insurance package and controlling costs. And then there was a late breaking announcement in late August that the New York State Comptroller reduced the contribution rates, employer contribution rates to the retirement system, resulting in significant savings in the 2022 budget. So the recommended budget was looking very different prior to receiving this news. So this change results in a savings of $1.2 million for us, and it will ultimately be reflected in our fringe rate. But this was very, very welcome news to us. Also on the expenditure side are increases in human service mandates. They increased by 3.84%, or we're projecting that they will in 2022. The county's 2022 Medicaid contribution is expected to be about $414,000 higher than in 2021. This is primarily the result of an unexpected decrease in our county's projected credits for the Affordable Care Act EF-MAP funding, which is federal medical assistance percentage, as well as the anticipated ending of CARES Act EF-MAP funding. Depending on whether and for how long that extra federal revenue, the CARES Act EF-MAP funding remains available, that anticipated year-to-year increase in Medicaid contributions in the 2022 budget could be reduced. But for now, it is projected at about $414,000. Also, increasing in the mandate category are our costs for the assigned counsel program. They're increasing by $225,000 in 2022. This is due to New York State broadening the eligibility criteria for assigned counsel representation in family court, and it's increasing from 125% to 250% of poverty, thus increasing the number of clients eligible to be served by the program. We're also hearing that the demand for assigned counsel representation has also increased throughout the pandemic, unfortunately, due to the rise in domestic violence cases needing representation. Moving on to our sponsored and partner agencies, in the 2022 recommended budget, we were able to restore target funding to our sponsored agencies, including Cornell Cooperative Extension, Ithaca Area Economic Development, the Tompkins County Public Library, as well as the rural libraries, the agencies served by the Human Services Coalition, OAR, and Tompkins Community Action. We were also able to support $490,000 in mostly one-time requests from agencies. And the sponsoring contribution to TC3 decreased by 1.6% per legislative resolution. Very briefly, we've budgeted $900,000 in contingency for 2022. This is consistent with prior year's baseline contingency budgets and expenditures. Now getting in a little bit more to over target requests funded in the recommended budget. We had the total number of OTRs requested were 7.8 million. We were able to support 7.7 million in this budget using a combination of levy dollars as well as some one-time funds and rollover. In a little more detail, you can see the amount. We received more requests for target funding than were recommended. Many of those requests were approved as one-time funding. And you can see that reflected in this graph here. And just to provide you with a little bit of the logic I use to fund OTRs in general, and hopefully you'll see this fairly consistently throughout the budget and throughout the departments and agencies' requests. In general, I tried to utilize ARPA funds for one-time requests to preserve fund balance. In general, we use fund balance for all of the Reimagining public safety projects with the thought that we can seek reimbursement for some, hopefully a good many of these initiatives through the New York State Shared Services. Amy Hendricks in our office is working together with Deanna on this, Deanna Carithers, and we'll be convening the Shared Services panel and constructing a plan. We also used fund balance where there was partial funding in combination with state or federal funds or rollover due to the restrictions around the use of ARPA funds, which cannot be used in combination with federal funds. So if there was any question as to whether there were federal funds, I just determined to fund it through fund balance and avoid using ARPA where it's potentially restricted. Also, in general, when there was a new initiative proposed by a department or an agency asking for new staffing, I generally recommended it with one-time or multi-year funding versus a restoration of a needed position due to a mandate or a previous position that was once funded by Target. So here are some of the major OTRs that were funded with Target in this budget. Several positions, including the Chief Equity and Diversity Officer in County Administration, moving that from one-time to Target funding. a confidential investigator in the DA's office. Again, that was funded with multi-year one-time and now can move to target. Restoring an emergency services dispatcher position in the Department of Emergency Response. A capital projects engineer in facilities, which has been funded in target before and will be certainly needed with the amount of capital projects that we have before us. And public health sanitarian in the health department to comply with some mandates. Also, moving to target funding this year in the recommended budget was the College Initiative Upstate program, which has been funded for years using multi-year one-time funding. It is also, it's been received funds through the CJATI committee and has proven to be very effective. And we're also restoring target funding to support runaway and homeless youth system support through the Youth Services Department. Some major funded one-time over target requests include a request through Cooperative Extension for its Agriculture and Horticulture Education Center. The county had funded this in the past. Under county administration, we're looking for a more robust language interpretation services for the organization, a critical lesson learned during the pandemic, and we'll be talking about that more under the county admin budget. Also under county admin, we would like to begin the process of replacing the county's budget software, which is long overdue. There are multiple inefficiencies and deficiencies in our current system and process. And again, we'll say more about that. Under the health department, some more OTRs that were supported include the community health workers, a new initiative to provide outreach to underserved communities. Highway machinery replacement. These are the budget supports 3 large pieces of needed equipment for the highway department. And these pieces of equipment are too big typically to be included in their operating budget, and they don't really fit in the capital budget. You can't bond for them. And we've been trying to replenish the highway machinery fund, but this is a very good use of Arpa funds to provide some needed equipment for the highway department. And then lastly on this slide, under human resources, a one-time payout for vacation time to resolve some front-loading issues when we transition to another piece of payroll software. So this issue dates back a few years, and it was caused by the way we calculate vacation accruals. And changing to our new software, we are crediting employees with vacation all at once at the beginning of the year versus throughout the year. And employees who had large vacation balances were threatened with losing their vacation time as a result of this change. We passed a number of memorandums of understanding with the union to allow employees to carry forward their vacation time so they wouldn't lose it and spend it down within a certain period of time. And then the pandemic happened, and a number of people have not been able to take their vacations during the pandemic because they've been called upon to work. So this has been an ongoing issue, and it's been carrying forward. The value of the time increases year after year, and this one-time payout would resolve the issue and would ensure that a certain subset of employees did not lose earned vacation time. And it would only take them down to the maximum balance. It would not pay out anything further. Okay. Moving on to some other major funded OTRs and one time, we're looking at the Reimagining public safety commitments. And again, the county has committed itself to a process and several projects to address the disproportionate impacts of the public safety system on communities of color, specifically Black and Brown people. We've allocated approximately $600,000 in costs related to multiple projects around reimagining public safety. And once again, the city of Ithaca is our partner in this, and they're also assuming costs for these projects in their budget process. And as I mentioned before, I budgeted these costs in fund balance with the plan of submitting them to New York State for reimbursement under our shared services plan. Some other major funded OTRs that we were able to fit into this year's budget. It includes one-time support for tourism through the Strategic Tourism Planning Board to support organizations who are reliant on room tax revenue to make up for that decrease. So about $655,000. The budget also supports a one-time request of $250,000 for the Alcohol and Drug Council. They come forward through mental health for support for the startup costs for their open access detox and stabilization center, something that is very needed in the community, and that this is looking at gap funding over declining gap funding over a 3-year period to help with their startup costs. And also under the mental health budget, Reach Medical has requested one-time support, essentially for services rendered in support of unhoused and hard to reach populations during COVID-19. That's about $200,000. So moving on to the risks in the 2022 budget. Not to state the obvious, but I don't think it can be understated. The most pertinent issue facing the 2022 budget is the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic and all of the potential ramifications there around economic recovery. We think it will continue to be unpredictable as the virus persists and as the variant persists. And also it will impact the ways that we as a county government and as an employer are called upon to respond to the immediate needs of the community. And that will be continuing to impact us and our workforce in significant ways. I also already mentioned that inflation seems like it will be a short-term phenomenon, but if it persists, it will impact our ability to bid out projects and procure items within budget. And then finally, just want to draw your attention to our recycling center and some continued risks there. When the recycling center budget was put together earlier this summer, they were projecting an operating loss of $375,000 for 2021. And they expect to draw on the solid waste fund balance to make their budget whole. This situation is due in large part to increases in expenses with their new contract and decrease in recycling revenues overall. A recent mid-year uptick in recycling revenues and some reductions in their expenses will diminish this loss somewhat for 2021. And we do hope that, that with the progressive annual increase in the solid waste fees each year, that we expect to balance the budget with a reliance on fund balance until then. So the 2022 recycling and materials management budget is proposed with a $275,000 operating loss, again drawing on funds from the solid waste fund balance. The remaining fund balance in that for the solid waste fund is projected to be $1.79 million. We've kept in the tax cap formula in the slide just for nostalgia. I don't have anyone who can really run through this with us just yet. But to talk about this year's tax cap or the projected tax cap for 2022, it's estimated to be 7.42%. This figure represents a substantial inflation from previous years, and it's due predominantly to sales tax credit offsets utilized by 6 towns around the county, and they include Caroline, Danby, Groton, Enfield, Newfield, and Dryden. So these municipalities chose to use sales tax credits to offset a portion of their property tax. So the 2.7% levy required to balance the recommended 2022 budget is roughly 2.4 million below the capped amount. And if that wiggle room is not used in the 2022 budget, that amount can be carried forward and added to the county's tax cap in a future year, which would be the recommendation essentially. So kind of in closing here, our approach to the 2022 budget is, in summary, a 2.7% levy increase, which meets the financial goal set by the legislature of coming forward with a maintenance of effort budget under the tax cap. This restores and supports current county operations and supported agencies using a combination of target funds, some fund balance, and ARP funds. Again, supports the capital program and preserves the fund balance for proposed community recovery uses. And also, just in closing, I said it in my budget message, my written budget message, but I just want to thank the legislature for your confidence and support in me in this budget process and the interim role in our department. And I want to thank the whole admin team for the roles that they've played to create the budget you have before you. Everyone has pitched in. It's been tremendous teamwork, but a particular thanks to Dan Nolan, our new budget director, and Samantha Freilich, our new budget analyst, as well as Autumn Edwards for their work in putting this budget together. It's truly been a teamwork effort. So with that, that's the end of my presentation. I can stop sharing and be happy to take questions.
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank Lisa and Daniel and everyone who worked on this under the most debilitating circumstances. We thought last year was bad, but this year, man, Lisa, you're just awesome. You and your staff, thank you very much. And I think you deserve a huge.
Thank you.
And now we won't be nice to you anymore. Okay. Does anybody have any questions before? Okay, I've got Mike and then Shauna.
Just one thing I read that the state unemployment trust fund is behind like $9 billion. And so employers are going to get hit with an increase in that. Are we expecting an increase in that for us in the budget?
I have not budgeted for it, Mike. I am going to have to look further into that and see what.
Brand new today, I've just read it.
Okay. I'm going to have to look a little further.
It might be one of our October surprises, you know.
They're never pleasant.
No, thank you. We will look into that further.
Hey, Shauna, did you have something?
Yeah, I have a few questions. I know that we've talked quite a bit about doing a compensation study, and wanted to ask if that was going to come out of contingent fund and when we were planning on doing that.
Yes, that's a great question, Shauna. So I've been having conversations with Ruby Pulliam, our HR commissioner, who's been gathering data on an RF, to do an RFP for a compensation study, or she's been getting bids rather. Why don't we say that? She's been getting estimates and bids for compensation study to start in the current year. And that's my understanding, that it would start in the current year. And I believe that she's planning on discussing that at the next meeting of Budget, Capital, and Personnel.
Okay, and then my follow-up to that is, assuming that the compensation study requests that we pay our employees more, is that going to be accounted for in our upcoming budget?
Yeah, there was really no way to account for that in the upcoming budget, because we don't know what the compensation study is going to tell us. I would imagine it would certainly tell us that we do need to make some increases across the organization. But without having that information, I don't know that we can budget for it. It would have to come out of our target. I mean, it would be ongoing costs.
Okay, I just want to make sure that I know year after year we've talked about this, and this is something that's really, really important to me, possibly out of our whole budget this year. So I want to make sure that we don't forget our employees and our staff that have been working really hard, and that we preserve the money in order to pay them what they deserve for next year and upcoming years. And then a few other things. I know I just read in the online yesterday that Cortland County had an audit and got into a little bit of trouble for paying out quite a bit of money to sick time and vacation time. And just wanted to kind of raise a bit of a question to that and make sure that we were doing it correctly so that there wouldn't be issues in an audit.
Sure. So I know that sick time is considered different than vacation time. We would certainly want to ensure that we were following all of the necessary rules and procedures, and if it's considered taxable income, we would work with finance to ensure that we were doing it properly.
Great. And then my last question is, for the Alcohol and Drug Council, was that $250,000 per year for 3 years, or $250 total?
$250 for 2022, and then declining in 2023 and 2024. So it's a 3-year request, the first year of which is $250,000.
Okay, and what is it for the following years?
I thought you might ask me that. I don't have it at my fingertips. If I could get back to you.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Sure.
Nope, I'm set. Thank you.
Okay, I see Martha's hand.
Thank you, Deborah. I think Daniel had his hand up. Maybe to say something, add something.
Daniel,
Hey, everybody. How are you doing? Nice to see you all, albeit virtually. Yeah, no, just a thing about the compensation study. Given that it will occur in the next budget, it will occur in the 2022 budget year. We will consider it for the 2023 budget year moving forward, because that's when the fiscal impact would actually take place. Having said that, it is something that Lisa and I have discussed. Our eyes on it, and part of the projections and things that we focused on when considering the fiscal health and stability of the county moving forward. We took that into consideration, knowing that there may be a fiscal shock, and you'll see that borne out in the the overall numbers and things like that of the budget. That's all. I just wanted a clarifying point.
so excuse me, Martha, let me follow up on what Daniel just said. Are you saying that whatever the compensation study recommends and whatever we end up deciding to do, it won't take effect until 2023?
I can jump in here. So we don't have anything budgeted for it in 2022. However, we do have one-time funds potentially available that we could enact something in 2022 but it would need to be with a commitment of making it target or ongoing from 2023 thereafter.
Yeah, it would be presented as part of the 2023 budget, even if there was changes that occurred during the modified budget of 2022. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Because I don't think it would be altogether fair to ask our employees to wait for another year.
Just talking budget. Yeah,
Okay, all right. Thank you. Okay, Martha.
Yeah, I was on that topic. I thought you said, Lisa, that the compensation study would be done in 2022.
Well, it's all according to the timeline that gets set forth, in the upcoming meetings. So we are going to have to review the various vendors and proposals, choose a vendor, and see how quickly they can get started to work with us. So it's a work in progress, but it's one that we're certainly interested in, and we want to get underway as soon as possible.
Right, but I was thinking you wouldn't have the results right away. Very, very easily wouldn't have the results till at least mid-year 2022. So, all right, that was my question. And I just wanted to, full disclosure, I'm at the Marriott Hotel in Syracuse at the end of the NISAC conference, and I got bumped off in the middle of your presentation somewhere after the unemployment numbers and came on just as you were finishing. So I will go back and watch the YouTube and may have some questions for you later. Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Dan.
Lisa, did you say, and do you have a number for your budget that's recommended to pull from the fund balance the budget?
No, I think you may be referring, I did mention for the recycling center to balance the recycling and solid waste center's budget. They will be pulling from the solid waste fund to balance that budget for that enterprise fund.
Is there a number for our general fund, reserve fund, fund balance?
I'm not proposing that we draw from the reserve fund to balance the county's 2022 budget.
Zero. Wow, okay, thank you.
Deborah, Henry has his hand up.
Oh, okay, thank you. Henry?
Yes, thank you, Lisa, for your presentation. I was curious did you consider the TC3 capital plan in your budget?
I did not. It came to my attention somewhat late in the process that it would potentially, be on the radar. In addition, the TC3, the commitment that we made to the TC3 workforce strategy is something that it fell off my radar, and I was not contacted by TC3 to put it on as an OTR. So those are two items regarding the TC3 budget that will need to be considered separately.
For FYI, Henry, Lisa and I had discussed this. I think this kind of fell through the cracks simply because Bill Talbot may not have taken into account our budget process entirely. And a lot of this stuff arose kind of at the last minute. So Lisa and I discussed the fact that the TC3 budget, the budget for the second and third academic years of their workforce-oriented curriculum, and any proposal we agree on with respect to their capital plan is going to have to be considered as member-filed OTRs.
Okay. Also, I know there's word that there's a $3.5 trillion bill out there for infrastructure. Um, if it ever gets passed, how would this affect the budget, Lisa? Do we have any idea?
Very well, I hope. So I don't know yet. I'm not sure what would be included that would impact our budget. I do make reference to that in the capital plan because it would certainly impact our capital plan, hopefully, for the better. Some of the ARPA funds that we've allocated, it may impact those projects. And if so, if some of those projects haven't started yet, we would move those around. But right now, it's really too soon to tell.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, is there anything else, or can we move on now to the capital plan or county administration's budget? And okay, Martha, your hand's up again.
Just a quick one. Assuming the way it looks, 2 bills will pass, federal bills or none. So that would be 4.5 trillion. So like get our grant writing pencils sharpened.
Let's not count our chickens. Anyway, so let's move on. We're sort of more or less not too far behind schedule. If you all would like to follow along on county administration's presentation, that begins on section 4, page 24 of your book.
Actually, Deborah, if I may, if it would be okay, I would like to follow with the capital plan next, if that's okay, and then go to our departmental budget.
Okay, so that's 3.2, section 3, page 2.
And I'm going to try to share my screen again here. Pardon me for 1 minute while I work this out. I'm not seeing it where I expect to. Okay, can people see my screen now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. All right, fantastic. So next is the recommended capital plan. Great. So, oops, here we go. So this slide should look somewhat familiar. It was taken from our last presentation. Again, the county is in the midst of a robust period of capital investment to meet our space management and emergency services, IT, energy, and other needs. And again, a cornerstone of our capital plan is our financial strategy to achieve net zero emissions, which we think we can do by 2027. The ARPA funds are going to be very helpful in meeting these goals and utilizing them for cash for capital projects. And once again, it puts us back on a regular allocation of levy dollars to support capital investment. And in the coming year, that's 0.5% of the property tax levy to support capital investment, which amounts to 6.37 million. And just some more background about our capital program. Back in the 2020 budget, so when in 2019, pre-COVID, the county adopted a policy change in the annual capital appropriation where we were going to start allocating 1% of the prior year's property tax levy to support capital investment. And then through this policy, each annual budget would dedicate more funds to pay for infrastructure improvements and support long-term capital needs. including the goal of net zero emissions. And most of these funds are applied to pay debt service on projects that have been authorized by the legislature. So the reductions in the 2021 budget due to the pandemic resulted in the reduction in the county's annual capital contribution by $770,000 and the suspension of several capital expenditures. So without these reductions, the projected capital, allocation would have been $7.9 million. So unfortunately, we've lost those years of compounding. And again, the proposed 2022 budget includes an appropriation of 0.5% as we recover. And that 0.5% is equal to the 6.37 million. So I just wanted to kind of put it back in context when we had adopted a very bold and robust and aggressive capital campaign that we are now looking to make sure we can fund. The ARPA funds, as I said, are going to go a long way to support and advance the county's capital program. And this is the listing of the projects slated for use of the ARPA funds as cash for capital. And again, these projects were selected according to the framework and the specific guidelines for using ARPA funds. These specific projects will meet the required timeframes for completion, and they don't use any federal funding in combination, which is prohibited. And again, to speak to it, it's been expressed previously that if some of these highway projects, for instance, can be reimbursed under a forthcoming federal infrastructure bill, if that's the case, we can revisit and change accordingly. But right now, we do want to put these in and plan for how we are going to fund these projects. And for right now, that's using the ARPA funds. So this is how these funds will be used on these various projects. Along this side, the side of this slide, you can see we have, again, a very robust capital program. We're looking at $28 million for the green facility projects over a period of years, probably $30.6 million for a downtown center of government, $4 million for very much needed public safety building improvements, $5.8 million for backup dispatch center and system upgrades, $2.67 million to recycling center upgrades, and $1.75 million for our electric vehicles. So the capital plan, again, is constructed with an eye toward keeping our net obligations predictable and somewhat constant, and utilizing our capital reserves where necessary. And again, we're predicting out for the next 5 years, and things are certainly changeable within a 5-year period. Somewhere beyond 5 years is very difficult to predict, but so this capital plan goes from 2022 to 2026. At the outset of certain capital projects, certain major capital projects, including the downtown office building and green facilities, unassigned fund balance was planned to be utilized to assist with cash flow and reduce the need for bonding overall, and thereby reducing the impact on the future tax levy. And in 2021, currently, as our communities faced with the impacts of COVID-19, I know the legislature has expressed interest in dedicating an amount of unassigned fund balance toward community needs through a community recovery fund program using fund balance. As a measured approach which supports both interests, this budget proposes a strategy for the scheduled use of fund balance toward upcoming capital needs. The strategy allows the legislature to set aside the needed funds for large capital projects over a period of time, and to reassess each year based on the overall fiscal health of the county. And it also allows the legislature the flexibility to change course if conditions worsen, or if growth and savings exceed exceed expectations. This scheduled use of the fund balance over time would allow the legislature to achieve both its capital goals as well as utilizing fund balance to assist the community through establishing a recovery fund. So this slide outlines the use of general fund balance needed each year to support our capital program over the next 5 years. And now I'm just going to go into a brief overview of each capital project, starting with the Green Facilities Project, which would be slated to begin in 2022, utilizing the first phase of which would utilize 7.3 million. In this slide, you can see the improvements slated for phase 1 and the estimated reduction in carbon emissions after each phase. And for more information on this, this is kind of almost just a sneak preview of what is going to be discussed at the upcoming F&I committee with our new Chief Sustainability Officer, Terry Carroll, along with our Facilities Director, Burrell Lamaro. So for more information, I would suggest tuning into this week's F&I committee for green facilities. And then you can see phase 2 would be slated to start in 2024 and phase 3 in 2026. And these projects would be funded through a combination of bonding and general fund balance. Next is looking at downtown campus. The legislature this year is committed $3 million toward the purchase of a downtown property in 2022 to serve as the Tompkins County Center of Government, which will house multiple departments and eliminate the need for leased space. And it will also be built targeting our energy goals. So right now, it's estimated that it's envisioned that this design work will occur sometime throughout 2022 and 2023, with construction possibly commencing in 2023 and 2024. The estimated project costs $30.6 million, and it would be funded through a combination of general funds, HQ funds, state and federal grants, and we would be estimating bonding at $14.6 million. Again, public safety building improvements. Back in 2020, a space needs assessment included some options for significantly renovating the public safety building. Since that time, significant bail reform and criminal justice reforms were put in place. COVID-19 happened. And so we really don't have good baseline data about the long-term impact of all of these changes on our public safety building and on our jail. And in the meantime, it's long overdue for some needed improvements. It's a 24/7 usage facility. So it's recommended at the minimum that we make $4 million of needed improvements to the existing facility. And of those costs, 3.75 would be funded using Arpa funds, and we would have those improvements start in 2022. Next is the emergency response projects, including the development of a backup dispatch center, as well as continual system upgrades. So the backup dispatch center has been in a planning phase for some time, is now in a partnership with Cornell, and the site selection, design, finalization, and agreements are being worked on in the current year, with construction planned for 2022. And all of these projects, the backup dispatch center, as well as the system upgrades, are expected to be covered by the state interoperable communications grant, which is $650,000 annually. So there would be no local cost to these projects. Next is the recycling and solid waste center upgrades, in which there are several improvements planned for 2021 2021, 2022, and 2023. You can see them listed on this slide. They are funded through a combination of New York State grants, Arpa funds for upcoming projects, as well as capital reserves. Next is the Green Fleet project, where we're looking to electrify 60 of our passenger vehicles in our fleet. We're seeing a lot of departments taking advantage of this Green Fleet initiative in the 2022 budget. So this funding provides funds to replace 12 vehicles annually and includes the construction of the charging stations at various locations. So the total project costs are $1.75 million and paid through cash with capital contribution. The IT infrastructure replacement has been ongoing, and it's relating to the various IT infrastructure needs for keeping our network safe and reliable, supporting 17 buildings and 27 departments. The estimated project cost is $1.4 million, and again, paid with cash or capital. Next, we have the highway and bridge improvements. This is a continuation of a 10-year highway rehab, reconstruction, and maintenance plan. Includes multiple projects, 8 bridge projects, 6 culvert replacements, as well as highway department shop and wash bay improvements, plus its the annual road maintenance program. So all of these projects are, instead of listing them all separately, this is just a combination of all of them, which are funded through, various projects are funded either through federal program or federal funding, state and local, and Arpa funds. Again, Arpa funds, we're being careful to not use them in combination with the federal funds. We have 4.4 million dedicated to facility restoration to address the backlog of deferred maintenance of our existing county facilities. And of those, we have 2.8 million dedicated through ARPA funds and 1.6 million local. This slide summarizes 2 long-term projects of the planning department. One is completing the 20-year aquifer study program, which is concluding with the Lower Fall Creek aquifer study, as well as the natural infrastructure capital program, which provides funding to protect natural systems to mitigate the adverse impacts of climate change. And then last but not least are our airport projects. So the major airport terminal project is largely complete, and we're now going out to bond for it. That is $11.96 million in bonding. And then in the upcoming capital plan 2022 through 2026, that includes 12 projects to comply with FAA requirements. And those projects, 90% are funded with federal funding, 5% state, and 5% through PFCs, passenger facility charges. And that is the summary of our capital plan. And this is a little...
I don't know if they're clapping. Oh, look. I don't know if they're clapping for you or because they're just glad this is over. And the cat, yes. All right. All right, any questions on this for Lisa?
I was wondering what cat that was that posed for that.
No animals were harmed in the production of this slideshow.
But the person who put the hat on the cat is in big trouble. All right. If there are no questions, oh, Shauna.
Hi, Lisa. I have a few questions. I was wondering on section 3, page 8, it refers to other funding. and it's the expansion of the rental car parking lot. And it notes in the description that other is the $3 per day that's charged for the rental cars. Can you tell me, has that amount that would cover this project, has that already been accrued?
Has it already been approved? Did you say?
Accrued.
Accrued.
Have we received those funds already? Do we have it in the bank?
I don't believe we have, and I need to, it's a great question for the airport, Mike Hall. I know that there are, we can apply for PFCs, and then there's another charge that we can apply for that would relate to the rental car parking. And I don't want to get too far out of my lane and try to answer that without that backup, but I can look into that, Shauna, and let you know.
Okay, great. And then the other question I have, it appears that a lot of the airport projects are being paid with PFCs, and that number comes out to $766,025. And I'm concerned because obviously we've seen such a decrease in PFCs. And we also initially accounted for those PFCs going towards the debt of the airport and the debt service. And so my question to you is, do we really think that we are going to pay off the debt and the debt service and then also have enough to pay for all of these projects?
Are you asking specifically about the debt and the debt service for the terminal project as well as these upcoming projects? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. I'm just concerned because I don't see the numbers adding up here. And I'm concerned that I absolutely love free, I'll say free state and federal money, although it's our tax money. But I also don't want to get into another situation where the county is responsible for adding money to these grants.
Yeah, so I can say that the airport, the terminal project is going out to bond for the remainder of the, for the balance of the project. If we receive the PFC funding for that, then that can help for the payment, but we're going out to bond regardless. I can get some more information for you regarding the upcoming projects.
Thank you.
I think that's a question that you ought to raise when we hear from the airport, Shauna.
Sure.
Okay, Amanda has a question and then Martha.
Thanks. Thanks, Lisa. I just had a question about the public safety building, and I'm not on the public safety committee, so maybe it's been talked about and I haven't really had a chance to read this fully, but could you maybe talk a little bit more about I guess we're deciding to go with doing improvements versus, getting a whole new building, which I understand that's a huge commitment, but I think we've needed new facilities there for a long time. So I don't know if you could just say a little bit more about it.
Sure, I can speak to that briefly. I think that you're raising a question which has been raised by the Public Safety Committee.
Okay.
Very specifically, which is, yes, we want a building with a different design and probably need one, and that would lead to greater efficiencies and so forth. However, given the change in the landscape around bail reform and public safety reform in general, and with the fluctuations with COVID, it's hard to know what size of facility we would actually be looking at. And so we're wanting to get a little more time under our belts to really understand what size and what we would be building for. And in the meantime, these upgrades are absolutely essential just because this building has taken such a beating over the years with 24/7 usage. So we want to make sure that the individuals that are in that facility, as well as the individuals that work in that facility, are healthy and safe and have good working and living conditions with these improvements.
Okay, that makes sense. I guess I'm just sort of wondering, and maybe you can't answer this, but how long are we gonna just sort of wait and see? Like 5 years, 10 years? I mean, I'm just like, is there, or we don't know?
Yeah, I think that's a great question to bring up with the Public Safety Committee.
Okay.
I can't really answer that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right, Martha.
Thanks, Deborah. Thanks, Lisa. I think on the public safety building, I seem to remember that in the ARPA guidelines, I see most of it you've got down for ARPA. I think there are some limitations about using ARPA for jails, but specifically health and safety improvements that can be tied to COVID are allowed. So, which obviously HVAC would make sense. I'm not sure plumbing would. There might be some nuances there that, you know, to dig into. Maybe you already have, but I just remember reading about that. In a couple of the items, so like Green Fleet and ITS infrastructure, you kind of said cash for capital, but you didn't say ARPA. Is that what you meant, or did you sort of?
No, didn't mean ARPA. I meant using, so the annual contribution, the levy contribution toward capital will pay for those projects.
Okay, so in other words, we don't have to bond.
Correct.
But it's that you're not planning to use specifically the ARPA money for that.
Correct.
Okay, thanks. Would you mind going back to I think it's slide 5, where you showed us the scheduled use of unassigned fund balance?
Sure.
I'm a little confused about that.
Capital presentation. Oh. This one. Yep.
Is that the one? Okay, yeah, right. And when you talked about this, you said this would allow us to use fund balance for community needs. Are you saying, could you explain that a little bit? Because these aren't the community needs. How did you mean this relates to the Community Recovery Fund?
What I'm saying, I think, had the legislature not been discussing a community recovery fund, I would probably be recommending that these funds in total right now be set aside in a capital reserve for these projects in total. So the fact that the legislature is considering a community recovery fund using fund balance, I'm wanting to display what we're projecting will be needed in the capital program year by year to support the capital needs. So that I'm not saying let's set aside 14.4 million for capital. However, in 2022, we expect that 3 million in fund balance will be needed to support the downtown office building in terms of planning, and will be needed to support green facilities in order to keep our debt service and bonding it at a reasonable rate so as not to negatively impact the levy.
So in a sense, you're not saying this helps us with the recovery fund. You're saying this is what competes with the recovery fund.
It definitely competes with the recovery fund. And that's why what I'm saying is, had I brought forward a proposal that said, let's dedicate 14.4 million to capital, it would definitely compete with the use of this with the recovery fund. What I'm saying is you can take a graduated approach year by year with capital, and this lays out what you'd be looking at and what you'd be needing over the next 5 years to support the capital program and keep the spending in check. So, you know, what we'd be looking at next year would be 3 million.
I see. So you're saying that if we're trying to identify what's, dare I say, extra fund balance, you'd feel comfortable if for 2022, 3 million out of that fund balance is sort of bookmarked for these two projects. Okay, got it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much.
I think it was designed to assist us in planning,
Yes.
Martha.
I couldn't hear you, Deborah. What? Designed to what?
I think this is designed to assist us in planning.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
All right, Annie, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you. So Lisa, I had a question regarding the electrical vehicles, as I'm contractually bound to ask a question about that. So my question is, I know I think there's an issue with I think we had some type of hardware that was going to be tracking different parameters around the electric vehicles. So I don't think that's actually working, or we're not getting the data yet, or something like that. You're shaking your head, yes. So my question is, is the cost savings for maintenance and the gas savings, is that built into any of our budgeting for this year coming up or other years?
Yeah, I do think that for departments that are procuring electric vehicles for 2022, those related expenses in gas and maintenance, et cetera, will be reflected in the departmental budgets.
Okay, so it'll be in there, so it will be coming out of somewhere else. So we'll be savings, but it won't show up right when we're purchasing them. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now if we're ready to move on from the capital plan and fund balance, before we do, I'd like to ask one question. Dan Klein asked if all of the OTRs if any of the OTRs were going to impact fund balance, and what I recall from your answer suggested that no, it wasn't. However, in your introductory letter, you said, of the department and agency requests, I've recommended 2 million of the target OTRs and 1.8 million of the one-time ODRs, drawing on fund balance.
Yes.
In order to minimize the impact on our tax levy and the draw on our reserves, I utilized 3.9 million in American Rescue Plan funding to cover the remaining recommended one-time requests. So does that mean that there's 3.8 million that's coming out of fund balance, or I'm just confused?
Yes, no, you're correct. And I apologize. I may have misinterpreted or misunderstood Dan's question. Yes, we are drawing on fund balance to support some of the OTRs. I was thinking of it in a different way. When he asked if fund balance was being used to balance the budget, I wasn't thinking about OTRs. I was thinking about just in general to fill a gap. But yes, some one-time OTRs are being funded through fund balance. So the rollover OTRs come out of, I believe, assigned fund balance, and then the general fund, the other OTRs come out of the general fund unassigned fund balance. And as I said, those are specifically the Reimagining public safety projects, which we want to try to document and shared services plan and get reimbursement that way, as well as any project that would require a combination of federal funding potentially.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so are we now ready to move on to the County Administration Department generally?
Okay. I'm gonna bear with me while I share this last screen.
Section 4, page 24. Okay, Lisa, you're still up.
Let's see.
And Lisa, will you be sending us your slides?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
Sure thing. Okay, and I'm assuming you can see this one will be much fewer slides.
Okay.
So, so this is the county administration department's budget request for 2022. This slide very briefly just compares our 2022 target budget to the previous year's adopted and previous year's modified budget. There's not a whole lot of commentary to make here, except that Dan and I have had some conversations about how we might make this a bit more meaningful in the future. But let's see. I'm going to jump next to the full-time equivalents. And we are in county admin are requesting adding 4.5 full-time equivalents to the roster. And lest you think that county admin is taking over the world, I can explain those in a little more detail. One of these requests, one FTE, full-time equivalent, moves the Chief Equity and Diversity Officer position out of multi-year one-time funding and establishes it as a target position funded through the levy. So this actually is not an additional individual. It is a position that is being assumed in the levy. This is the second year of the multi-year OTR, and I'm recommending that it be made a permanent role in the organization through target, and it would move that position to target 1 year ahead of schedule, as there is a critical need for this role in the organization. And then of these FTEs, 2.5 of the FTEs are accounted for with the establishment of the Community Justice Center, or the CJC, staffing under Reimagining Public Safety. Those just happen to fall under county administration's budget. They include the CJC project manager, data analyst, and a half-time administrative assistant. These are all proposed as multi-year one-time through fund balance. And then the last FTE proposes a full-time media production assistant. This was discussed at the last GO meeting. This would be a long-term sustainable solution for streaming legislature and committee meetings, as well as other county media production needs. And this is also proposed as multi-year one-time funding through Arpa. And then this is our last slide, but it is a doozy. We made it, we really made it work here. These are our over target requests. And you'll note that many of them have the same priority ranking, and that's not in any way trying to pull a fast one. They're all different functional units within the same budget, and then it ranks them according to one time or target or rollover. So that's why you get multiple 1s and 2s. But I'll just go over in order and give a brief summary of each. And then I know my county admin colleagues are on hand to answer any questions about them. And again, I'll try to be brief here. So the first one is the one-time sustainability of streaming. This is the media production assistant. This is one asked for 3-year one-time funding to implement a succession plan and begin a long-term solution for streaming of the county legislature and committee meetings. And this would replace an existing contract of approximately $30,000 in county admin's budget for the streaming that we now have. So it would be moving the work from a contractual arrangement to being done in-house. as well as looking at the technology and equipment needs for this. The second is, again, the one-time of year one of 2 years of one-time funding for the CJC staffing, project director, data analyst, and part-time admin assistant. Priority 3, and I mentioned this previously, is the language access implementation. And this is projected to be one-time funded through Arpa. But over the last 18 months of the COVID pandemic, it's really underscored the need to increase the information available for residents of our community with language access barriers, and that the critical and timely health-related information is very important to our community members, and as well as information about the county programs and services available that are critical to people's health and well-being, emergency notifications, reimagining public safety, etc. So we currently utilize Language Line and Empire interpreting for these services for our departments for oral interpretation and written translation, but those services don't include our website or online presence. So over the last several months, our admin staff has met with community stakeholders, department heads, and employees to better understand the need for language support. And so this funding includes service contracts for interpreter services with new vendors as well as existing vendors to engage more diverse communities, software to translate website content, and human translation and video production. So there's a lot to this request. The next one I'll mention is establishing the Chief Equity and Diversity Officer position with target funding. Again, a year earlier than originally anticipated, but due to the impact that this role has within the organization and the capacity of our organization to transform itself into one that actively advances equity, both externally and internally. And I believe that we're certainly on a path for doing so. The next proposed OTR is use of rollover funds, 100,000 and change in rollover funds on a new county enterprise management system to fund new budget software for the organization and to get us started on this path. We have found that the current software system is proprietary. It is inadequate. It lacks some basic functionality, and there are many inefficiencies in it. There are large amounts of data, manual data entry, exposing us to substantial risk of human error. And I think the transition in staffing has really put the spotlight on this, that it had been held into place for some time by our previous staffer, and we really need an investment in a current system that will help support a very, very large and complex budget process for the organization. The next OTR is recommends 31,000 in one-time funding to get us started for operating support for equity, diversity, and inclusion. The support for Team Jedi, for training, supplies, research, and other resource materials. Operating support for the Chief Equity and Diversity Officer, for subscriptions, professional development and to support the overall goals for changing the organizational culture. And then it also includes training around specific topics, which could include diversity, equity, inclusion, justice training, intersectionality, intercultural communications, LGBTQIA+ allyship, supporting our military and veteran services, and ability and accessibility in the workplace, among others. So would support that type of training for our organization. The next is 40,000 one-time request to develop a comprehensive community healing plan. Again, that is part of the Reimagining Public Safety initiatives and projects. This would be used to contract with an external consultant to collaborate with community leaders to develop and implement the plan. The next is a request for $19,600 in one-time funding for to continue the use of Go Delivery software, which is email newsletter software, which is being customized and being utilized to allow all county departments to create and deliver their own email newsletters, which are very common way of engaging and interacting with the community. The next is a one-time request of $12,500 for Reimagining Public Safety to support 12 months of research on an alternative response model. Again, part of the Reimagining Public Safety Collaborative, and proposed use of fund balance, again, with the hope for reimbursement. The next is a 7,000 target increase to pay for the organization's Zoom costs, something that didn't exist a couple of years ago, but now is a very common way of doing business. And we are centralizing those costs and those memberships through county administration. And then the last, and certainly not least on the list, is 20,000 in one-time costs, again, for the Reimagining Public Safety Initiative to support officer wellness program development, a countywide program to promote and support holistic officer wellness so that law enforcement can perform to their maximum potential. So again, I can stop the share at this point and entertain questions.
Lisa, I know a lot of this is the Reimagining Public Safety expenses that got put into admin's budget.
Yes.
Are the numbers that you gave us the county's share, or is that the total and we're expecting to be reimbursed for half of it by the city?
The numbers I provided were the county's share.
Okay, thank you.
And the city, for most of those, not all, but most, the city has an equivalent share that will be going through their budget process.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I've got Shauna and then I got Amanda.
That was my question, Deb. Thanks.
Okay, Amanda?
Yeah, thank you. It does seem like county admin is trying to take over the world here. I just have,
But in a good way.
in a good way. I just have hopefully a simple question on the FTE page, section 4, page 25. You have budget analyst 2 and a budget director.
Yes.
I thought we only had one.
We currently only have one, and if you'll recall, the legislature authorized the hiring of a second budget analyst to assist with ARPA reporting,
Oh, right, okay.
auditing, et cetera, and that would be paid for out of ARPA funds. We have not yet hired for that title, and we're waiting to see the actual reporting requirements to see exactly how much would be needed before hiring.
Great, thank you.
Okay, anything else for Lisa? Oh, Martha. And Henry, okay.
Thank you. Well, so one of my questions was about the city's share on this, on the reimagining. At some point, and you probably have already planned to do this, it'd be good to kind of see in one place the reimagining public safety expenses as kind of one unit. On language access, your description of it sounded like mostly ongoing expenses. I think the only thing I heard from you was software to translate the web, our website. Is that, that seems like a one-time thing, but a lot of it seems like it's ongoing.
I think you're right, Martha. I think we are looking to establish a baseline to see what we might be needing in the future. We realize the price tag is high. We have sticker shock as well with the price tag. Deanna, do you want to say a little more about, because she was very instrumental in helping to put this together?
Sure. So Dominic and I have worked collaboratively on this process. So we see this process as multifaceted. First of all, we went through the process of looking at our policy. Specifically, we have a policy, but we need to expand and update some information. One of the things that we heard from our community members was that they felt like the way we currently resource them is they feel like they're on the margins and they feel like they're not getting the proper support. And then when it became an emergency response, some of the things were like, how do we center this work more, knowing that our team worked tirelessly to do so. We also realized we don't have people on call the way we typically would to be able just to translate these things. We also did, we looked at the information that we have in terms of our current expenditures, what languages are out there, but then also knowing that it's situational, right? Sometimes we have different populations that may be more interested in certain things. There may be some that are not. Here's an example. We talked with Jay from assessment. Jay was like, we're not entirely confident that we know that all of our folks who may not have the same opportunities understand where the deductions or where the cost savings could occur in terms of assessment. So bringing those things to the fore is why we try to create that baseline, knowing that it's a multi-pronged approach. One, it could be someone calling in directly for a service that could be coming to a storefront. There could be web translation, or there could be a document that we want to translate, knowing that it's going to be a robust endeavor. So sometimes we jokingly say it's from $0 to $1 million, knowing that that's not really a joke, and that depending upon how much it costs and how big the document is and where our priorities are, we'd like to do that. We also did a listening tour to get to this point in terms of our speaking to our Latinx sisters and brothers, talking to our Asian American folks, our folks who speak Karen. And I'll go, again, a nod to today is the first day of Latinx Heritage Month. I mean, actually, it's tomorrow, I should say. There's nothing more fitting that we could be talking about at this point. So it's a multi-pronged approach. And Dom, if you're there, again, we did this collaborative, so there's more you'd like to add, just knowing that this is our baseline target. And if we do this well, we'll be asking for more. And then lastly, I'd like to say one of the things we heard from our community partners is they'd like to have some welcome videos in multiple languages. We're not able to do that right now, but again, welcome to DMV. What would that look like in multiple languages? And so we're trying to take those things on so that our community has a sense of belonging.
So you're saying it's a baseline in the sense you're going to do this work and kind of see, kind of going forward, how much you think it'll have to be ongoing, and maybe some things can actually be set up and then they sit there and won't have to be repeated, but okay. All right, thank you. It's great. I mean, I think it's long overdue. I think that's a really good idea. I would suggest, I wonder if there might be some models in other cities, other communities that already have produced some materials we might be able to use. So, all right, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So I've got Henry and Leslie.
Yes, I sort of the same question. I was wondering, does the city have any translation services? Are we ahead of them?
They have, to my understanding, they have similar processes to what we have. They would like to be more robust, and then also also understood any documents that are translated for reimagining public safety, those costs are shared as well. What you have in front of you are the information, it's the budgetary implications for what was shared previously prior to the approval of the joint plans. From there, we're also in the process of developing the contract that says anything that we print or anything like that that is robust and of this magnitude would be pre-approved in writing and agreed upon by Common Council, and then we would move ahead knowing that those costs would be shared.
Thanks.
Okay, Leslie.
Thank you. Back to the question, it's the different items around reimagining public safety. So I appreciated other folks' comments. Those were mine as well. Will these all be, you were hinting the costs, the shared costs are not 50-50. Are there, is there a differential in the cost for most of these items, or are they jointly shared? That whole listing that Martha was talking about would be helpful so that we could see that funding.
Sure. Lisa, I think you referenced, you have a slide in the capital or the first presentation that spelled out all the different costs there. If we go back to that at some point and share that with them. But most of the costs, I would say the majority, there's only a couple that are not. One is the training. It's because the city already has a training budget. Ours was really small. And so we had to grow ours to get to where theirs is. And so that's the funding for that. And I believe, however, knowing that we may not be sharing funds, but they're also appropriating funds. So it's not that we're paying more, it's actually equalizing what exists. But the majority of them, outside of maybe one or two of them, max, they're all 50-50, unless spelled out in writing. And I would say that's probably 90% of the cost.
All right then, does anybody have anything else for administration, or can we release them from their long presentation? All right, I take that as a no. All right, congratulations, Lisa, Deanna, Daniel, Dominic. We're moving on.
Thank you very much.
We are, let's see, 7 minutes ahead of schedule. So I'm going to propose that we take a really quick break so people can get something to eat or get up and stretch, and then we will be right on schedule with finance at 7:25 on page 78 of section 4 of your book. Thank you. Get back at it, folks. All right, it's 7:25 and we're back on schedule, and we are going to hear from Rick Snyder.
Out of breath. We just got our two panelists live with Lisa Schott joining us from the Treasury Division and Joanne Carruthers, Director of Accounting Services. So we just got them logged in as participants. Drew Bray, the Deputy Director, is here with us tonight also. And we'll have a short presentation, which is exactly what you want to hear. So I'm going to share my screen. There, you should see our opening slide.
We see it.
Okay, wonderful. I want you to refer to, in your budget books, pages 78 up through pages 83. And we'll get started with an overview. Here we're looking at the department at large, which is the same as your page 78. And you can see that our expenditures have only gone up $55,000 or 3.7%. We do have some OTRs, which we'll be getting to at the end of the presentation. Our revenues also went down about $25,000, and that was due to rollover revenue that was available to us in the 2020 budget was not available to us in the 2022 budget. So the revenues went down only because we're not claiming any rollover. It should also be noted that we're doing less duties as treasurer for the consortium. So our contract with them will be much less in 2022, and that's another reason for revenues going down. But when you look at the net total, grand total for the department, our dollar change here is $80,480, up 7%. If you want a more detailed look, division by division, you can turn to page 80 in your booklet, and that first page, Treasury Division, shows that we met our target exactly at $104,000 net local cost for the county. So there really wasn't hardly any change at all in the Treasury Division. On page 81, you can see the accounting division at the top half of the page, our purchasing division at the bottom half of the page. And in our accounting division, we do have some OTRs. So our spending for accounting went up about $25,000, and we'll be describing that in the OTRs. At the bottom, our purchasing division has not really changed much at all, but we do have, it went from $99,000 target up to $136,000, and we'll be describing that with the additional staffing for purchasing that we've added this year for that increase. Page 82 shows a small unit that we use for taxes of county-owned property, and that's a brief overview at a 30,000-foot level for the department at large. The next screen here talks about our positions or FTEs, and I'm going to turn it over to Joanne Carruthers to discuss this.
Okay, thanks, Rick. As you can see, there's not much change over the last few years as far as the number of FTEs. If you want to look at the detail, it's in section 4, page 79. However, we haven't changed the number of FTEs, but some of our positions have changed. For instance, the buyer position has been replaced with a purchasing manager position, And we've hired Joyce Burke to take that position. She'll be starting next week. Also, we've hired a purchasing consultant. His name is Jim Fabian. He is, or was, he's retired from SUNY Stony Brook as the Assistant VP for Procurement. So he comes to us with so much knowledge, and he's been a great resource. He is really helping us get the best practices surrounding purchasing updated and getting us going that way, as well as just helping us with the state guidelines, making sure we're following guidelines as we should. You may have seen the press releases for the airport cafe. That's what Jim has been working on. So overall, there hasn't been, as far as the number of FTEs haven't changed, but some of the positions have.
And I'd just like to add that Jim has been with us for about 6 weeks. You may see him in our offices. He is a contractual servant of the county. He is not technically an employee, but he does have an office here, and he does work here some of the time, and he does work at home some of the time. And we've been able to obtain Jim and his services on a contractual arrangement, not an employee arrangement, all of this year and probably well into next year. So this is one of the ways that we've devised to reduce and get purchasing running up fast and strong. Yep, I just lost it. There we go. I'm going to turn it over to Drew so he can discuss the OTRs. This is the meatiest part, so I give the hard stuff to him.
Thanks, Rick. Thanks for the great lead in, Joanne, because I think this really talks about it. So for legislative members, this is the detail that's on page 83. I'm not going to go through it line by line, but I'll give you some high-level overview. And then Rick will be here to answer any questions afterwards. So the 4 OTRs we have presented, the first 3 are all around staffing. The first one is the professional services that both Joanne and Rick just mentioned for having Jim here. We were looking at having this being a staff position, but Jim said he really didn't need any benefits. So he came in at the same dollar per hour, basically, that we were looking at a purchasing manager, and he's been a huge asset. So we're looking at continuing that and doing an OTR for that. The second OTR is looking at a few different salary positions. The first one is moving our payroll specialist position to a work rate next year. Morgan's a new position in there, a new person in that position, and she's currently at the higher rate. The other 2 areas, the second area in this OTR is moving an account clerk typist, which is really a bottom rung position, up to a next step up. We're in the process of doing this now and getting HR to grade the position. So we wanted to put a placeholder in there to move that up to the next step and really be able to attract a stronger skill set for that position. Lastly, we've never budgeted for overtime in the finance area, but definitely with COVID and a lot of the stresses and projects that have been assigned over the last year or 2, we are running some overtime. We've been able to absorb that, but as we get closer to full staffing, we wanted to be sure there was a placeholder in the budget for that. So that's the second OTR. The third OTR is what Joanne mentioned. We're replacing the role of the buyer with actually a division manager position. So this will be a purchasing manager. As you can see, it's not even $3,000 more per year above the buyer position, but it is slightly higher. Again, it gives us the tools to recruit better and also to fairly compensate what they would earn outside in a purchasing position. The last OTR is very simple. We've been able to absorb this for many years in our budget, but we're experiencing more and more of our operations are based on computer systems, computer software, and we do experience annual increases in the maintenance costs for those software. So this focuses around Adobe Acrobat licenses and the financial system software. So that's it for the 4 OTRs in a nutshell. Back to you, Rick.
Thank you, Drew. That was very succinct and excellent presentation. I want to thank Lisa Shaw and Joanne and Drew for this year doing the entire budget themselves. This is the second year for some of them and the first year for another one. And they've been able to manage the budget system with Kevin's help before he left. And they were very, they put the budget together in a very professional way. And I appreciate their hard work behind the scenes. And that's why I have them here tonight to share it with you, because I want you to see them and I want you to confirm to them what I've thought all along, that we have great staff. And they said, I'm going to answer your questions. They're here to answer your questions, because I know that you always come up with something that I can't figure out, but we're open for your questions now.
Okay, thank you, Rick, and thank you, finance staff. We appreciate you being on hand to answer our questions. Does anybody have any questions? Annie, you've got one.
Thanks. It's really not a minutia question, unfortunately, but it's an overall question. So is your department now fully staffed?
We have all the positions filled. The last person we have to hire is that one that we're adjusting the salary for. We will be hiring a finance accounts payable person. So technically we have a vacancy, but we have a temporary employee filling it right now. So it's both yes and no. We do have a vacancy. We should be advertising for it in the next 4 weeks, and we should have a hiring 4 weeks after that. But we really love our temporary employee, Linda Halstead, who just turned 71 this past week. Oops, I probably shouldn't have said that. She's proud of it, though. She wears it like a badge. She can outwork almost any of us here. And as you know, she's come back like 3 times after retiring to help us out. And she's actually worked in 4 different roles over the last 6 to 10 months. And I love having her here as a temporary employee, and really would hate to lose her. But we will be hiring that last and final full-time position before year end.
Great, thank you.
Okay, Martha?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. So do I understand, so Jim, and I sorry, I missed his last name. Is he planning, is this going to be ongoing, and that's the role he prefers, and as opposed to being a salaried employee? Is that?
Good question. Jim came to us, and at first we envisioned him to be our purchasing manager. And when it came right down to the wire, being retired and enjoying the retiree life, he really didn't want to commit to full-time work, and proceeded to pretty much pull his name out of the running for that position. And then later on, because this was not my idea, but some of my staff said, we really need Jim. Maybe we could give him part-time work. And so we went into negotiations with him, and he was amenable to coming up with a contract. He would work basically about 20 hours a week instead of 40 hours a week. So it was very comfortable for him to come up with a contract. And we're going to keep him on as long as we can keep him, because like I said, we are retooling the organization, and he will be an excellent teacher for Joyce Burke when she comes on board next week, as she will be, in fact, our full-time long-term purchasing manager.
So I guess what I'm asking is, do you see him as a transition as she gets oriented and trained and everything for a period of time? Or should the legislature plan, say, after he doesn't want to do this half-time anymore and, wants to really retire, should the legislature be thinking this would actually be a half-time job you'd need to fill?
Drew, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, I'll jump in here. Thanks, Rick. I think it will be. I think that Jim will be very involved for the next few years. He and his wife actually retired to Danby. They bought a house about a dozen years ago up there. So I think he'll be here fairly full-time for the next 12 months or so, a few days a week full-time. And that will transition, I think, into an admin position as he gets Joyce fully up and running. So that's why we put it to target. I think that's your question, if I understood it right, Martha. So we do envision 1.5 people in that. We'll probably end up with sharing that with some finance duties elsewhere in our department. So
I see, that makes sense. And that's what I had heard over the years, that one person in purchasing really wasn't enough. Okay.
That's correct. It's a lot for one. So thanks for the question. Good question.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I have a question from Shauna and then Mike.
Yeah, maybe I'm confused. For the gentleman that has been hired that is serving, I guess, like as a consultant, are we essentially paying him as we would a full-time person and then a little bit more for him working half time?
No, we're actually paying the same hourly rate, and he works anywhere from 20 to 40 hours a week.
Okay.
So he bills us per hour, and he does donate a lot of his time. So.
Well, we don't want him to donate time either, but okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood. Thank you.
His one comment to us was, he said, well, if I charge you full salary and fringe, that means my property taxes go up. So he said, I'll just be a contractor and charge you an hourly rate. And so he really wants to see us succeed. He's got a great attitude. So
great. Thank you.
Can we clone him? Never mind. Mike.
Maybe this is for Lisa. I'm not sure. I see your OTRs that you have presented to us, Rick, are all recommended. And then we just got our budget books this afternoon, and I pulled out the OTR summary table, the big one. And I noticed that almost all of them are recommended. There are a few that are modified or a couple that were not recommended, but it just seems like in the past when we've had presentations, we've seen several recommended in different departments and some not recommended. Is that just a coincidence that is happening this time, Lisa, or have you asked them not to show the ones that you didn't decide to recommend?
No. So there were, I would say, a few budget conversations that I'm not with finance, but with other departments that after a back and forth about an over target request, they elected to pull it if it wasn't recommended, but it was not necessarily requested by me that those be pulled. That it's always the option of bringing it forward to the legislature to decide. So, but there were some of those that occurred this year.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions for finance? All right then, moving on to human resources, section 4, page 111 of your books. And Ruby Pulliam, you are up.
Hello, how's everybody?
Oh, we love budget season.
More meetings, please.
Okay, well, we will make this short and sweet. I'm here with Deputy Commissioner Laura Granger and with Heather Buck, who is our, I forget her title because we seem to add things to it all the time, but it is, Heather, what's your title?
HR Programs and Systems Administrator.
See, HR Programs and Systems, what? Administrator. Okay. So we're going to go directly to the PowerPoint presentation that was provided. I have to share screen?
Yes.
Okay, excuse me. I'm new at this. And this is not, okay. I gotta pull it up. Okay. I haven't opened it on here.
Okay, so you can
Share.
minimize that. Don't share
Okay.
until you get into it.
Hold on, guys. They're teaching me.
So minimize that and get into the actual slideshow, wherever that is.
It's on my Outlook.
Okay.
Okay. Where's my Outlook? Right there. They're gonna see all of mine.
Nope, they won't see that yet.
Okay. Okay, now I need to find,
Go to the search, current search.
where am I?
Yep, right there.
Autumn. Here we go. Not that one? Are they seeing that? Where's my attachment?
This should be the.
This one.
Yeah.
There we go.
And then once you get that up, then you can hit share.
Okay, that's
So if you want to click onto that,
Yes.
click onto the left hand, yeah, that one, or click show.
Hmm?
You want to view it as slideshow. Slideshow?
Slideshow.
Yeah.
There we go.
And now you can
share screen. You need to take control of the screen.
And where is it?
Right there.
Right there?
That box right there. Make that large. All right. And now
share screen. There you go.
There you go. And then click that one. And then click share.
Share. Yep.
That's too much.
You're rolling.
Okay. Can everybody see the screen now?
Congratulations, Ruby.
I hate it. Well, in my defense, I thought county admin would have that up for me, so I'm special. Okay, so we're going directly to this.
We're signing you up for Zoom training.
Oh, please do. Please do. Okay, let me make this. This is the first stream. It's the recommended budget. I'm not going over all the figures. I think I've spent enough time trying to find it. So we have here our modified, our 2021 budget, our 2022 target, the recommended OTRs, and the difference there. Our next screen is the full-time equivalents. We've gone from 2021 with 9 full-time equivalents to 11 and a half. These have already been included in the target. That was one position, the administrative assistant that was changed, done a position conversion. The employee benefits assistant that you all were so kind to give us mid-year. And the halftime person was already in the budget, but under regular pay. For some reason, it did the position wasn't identified, but it is not a new position. So these are all positions that we have in the budget as of now. All right, the OTRs. Lisa has already included 3 of them in her presentation. These are the ones for the cultural responsive training, the resolve the front loading issue, and the recruitment strategy for law enforcement. They are being housed in HR to administer, but they're actually from the county admin's department. So I will start with the OTR 4114. I think that's number 99, according to what I'm looking here. The one for $30,000. That's coming from our in-service training. What this represents is a restoration of the $30,000 that was reduced from the countywide training funds. And there was an agreement that it would be replaced or restored in increments of $30,000. So that's the priority number 1 in our in-service training OTR. Number 2, since I'm on that one, is the culturally responsive training for law. That's the amount of $40,000. And again, Lisa has explained that in her presentation. This is resulting from the Reimagining Public Safety Collaborative, and it's for a culturally responsive training specifically for law enforcement personnel. HR will be administering that training fund in conjunction with our countywide training fund. So those are the only 2 under our in-service training. Going back to 4114-100, the amount is $6,601. And that is for our programs, to increase our programs and expenditures. What this represents is material for civil service test preps. It also represents the mandated cost of our exam fees to the state and pre-employment testing for road patrol and corrections. We've already exceeded our line this year, so we've increased it just by a little bit for that because there are also increased fees for our psychological evaluations and physical exams. It also represents $5,000 that's going into our reward and recognition program, which covers our 25-year club dinner, our employee picnic, and our milestone certificates and gifts. Again, that amounts to $6,601. The second OTR under our personnel functional unit is the $16,000 for our UKG HR software. In that program, we have to do the ACA 1095 forms each year to IRS. UKG will allow us to get us a report, but it does not allow us to actually produce the forms and then get them to IRS and to the employees. So this $16,000 would go under professional services to assist us in getting those forms prepared and submitted. The last one under there is also the culturally responsive recruitment strategy that Lisa also mentioned, the $17,500. And that's this county share. The city will also be putting in that. And that's specifically for advertising and marketing to target recruitment efforts toward underrepresented prospects. It's for a consultant who will help us develop a comprehensive plan in support of both the Sheriff's Department and the Ithaca Police Department in order to reimburse, for online advertising, recruitment, and industry-specific diverse sites. And last is the resolve the front loading issue, the big amount for $229,193. That's from one-time Arpa funding. And that's what Lisa has described that will resolve the problem that resulted from front loading the vacation, where employees will exceed the vacation max according to their contracts. This is to pay because they have not been able to use it and we've extended it, but through COVID, these employees are in danger of exceeding their max for their vacation. So this would pay just so they can get back to the maximum level. And I think that's all of them.
Well, thank you, Ruby. Does anybody have any questions?
Let me stop sharing.
Yeah, because I can't see the people who are, Mike Lane has a question.
The space question. Have you got room for all these people, the two additional, 2.5 FTEs?
We have made room for them. They are here now. But with us alternating schedules, we some doing 2 days in the office and then working remote the other time. We're trying to make it so that no one is in the same space at the same time. So yes, we are making room.
Okay, because I know your department's been very space cramped for a long, long time.
We are, which is why
That
we're
sounds
doing.
like it's being innovative to be able to share space the way you're talking about.
Right.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, anybody else? All right then. Oh, wait.
Oh, I
Ian's got a
love you
question.
all. I love you all.
Don't get too excited. Ian's got a question.
Okay.
Yeah, I have 13 questions for you. Oh, no, just one. So just because we just got the budget book today, so I'm just trying to read through this for the number in the book. It's number 103. It's the one-time buyout of the benefits. So this is vacation, I presume, it looks like. And so this was staff were given time to roll over more money, or sorry, more vacation time in 2020 and 21, it looks like.
Right.
And now we're going to look at because now the vacation time, I think as Lisa described, is going to be front loaded at the beginning of the year and not given with each pay period. So that's also would have exacerbated the situation. So it's those things combined. And also because they were a lot of people were unable to use their benefits or their vacation time. So all of those things combined are why we're doing the buyout. Does that sound accurate?
Yes, basically so. Because the system front loads, it means that all of your vacation is given on January 1st. So if you already have 2 weeks and you get your next year's allotment at first, and then you're not able to use your vacation due to COVID, then you're in danger of being over the maximum amount per your contract. So this would allow us to pay that down so they won't lose their vacation.
Was it always front loaded, the vacation?
No.
Or is that a change? That's a change, right?
That's a change with the new system.
Okay. All right. And then I don't know if it would be you or finance department, but I don't see vacation even accruing on my pay stubs, but that's another question. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a new system change, but I think Lisa had something she wanted to add.
Yeah, just it is a new system change, but it has been in effect for, I want to say 3 or 4 years now. So so when we made the change, it had this result, and we gave employees an opportunity to spend that vacation down if they were going to go over the max. And we did that with subsequent MOAs to allow employees to spend that vacation down. And now, since COVID in 2020 and 2021, the situation's only been exacerbated. So you're right, Annie, that it's a combination of all of these things, but the change to front loading occurred a couple of years ago.
And Annie, you don't get vacation time because you get paid so much.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that explanation.
Okay, Martha, you have a question?
Yeah, about this, and I'm sorry if you explained this while I was bumped out of the hotel's internet. Is this something that's going to happen again, or is this a one-time fix?
It's a one-time fix to resolve the issue once and for all. That the issue that resulted as a result of the vacation front loading, which we have not been able to resolve over several years due to COVID, et cetera. So this should wipe the slate clean, and from here on out, not have this issue going forward.
That's good. That's a big number. Thank you very much.
Okay, anybody else? All right, in that case, we will move on to TCAT, and you can find that at page 34 of section 5 of your book. Hi, Scott, how are you?
Hey, good. Thank you. Great to be here, and thanks for inviting me. I know it's a yearly thing, but we're here and ready to give our presentation. So thank you. You want me to put up the PowerPoint, or is that something?
No, go ahead with your PowerPoint.
Okay, I can do
If you
that.
have trouble, we will help you.
Oh, okay. Okay, do this, and then I will go back and share it. Okay, and now I'm going to go and go to from the beginning. How's that look?
That looks perfect, thank you. Wait, now it went back to something else.
Okay, how's that? Better?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So I got to figure out how to advance it now. Oh, there we go. Okay, we are good. So I have some additional slides that I'll go over, that will go over all this in more detail. While you're looking at this, I'd like to introduce Julie Ellis Grove, our new controller, who's here. As you know, Rick Andrasik has retired. So Julie has been here for a month and a half or something like that, right, Julie? So thank you.
3 months.
It's been that long so far, and yeah. But I'd like to start by mentioning, and this is important, that TCAT will not be asking the county for an increase in funding over last year. So that's important to note from the beginning. So I'll make it quick. We do have a few slides here. We ended up $6 million over budget in 2020, thanks to the CARES funding we received. The $850,000 you see there on the bottom near the right is listed as the total for 2021, and that may be misleading, as it does not include TCAT's portion of the American Rescue Fund plan funding, and the ARP funding has not been allotted to TCAT, and we really expect this to happen within the next couple of weeks. So that's going to be coming really soon, and we can certainly adjust this budget when that happens. But I want to mention that with so many unknowns, it's been very difficult trying to put together a one-year budget assumption. We decided that a 3-year budget projection, which would have been nice, it may not have been very accurate. So you're going to be looking at a 1-year assumption from us today. So the operating assumptions explained in a little more detail. You'll see that we recently settled for a 1-year extension with Cornell, and that agreement included a 3% increase. The third bullet there talks about STOA and hold harmless. And hold harmless has really been very critical for us. As you may know, STOA is the largest source of funding each year for TCAT. STOA is based on revenue, ridership, and mileage. It's actually based on ridership and mileage. And TCAT ridership, as you know, has been way down. Things have started to change with Cornell back in person. However, just last month, we were still between 35 and 40% of where we were ridership-wise pre-pandemic. So to help transit agencies survive in New York State DOT enacted the hold harmless provision, which allowed us to use ridership and mileage statistics from 2019, when we had over 4 million riders compared to 1.5 million in 2020. So hold harmless will continue through the first quarter of 2022. So we're holding on till the first quarter of 2022, and then hoping that ridership is back. And as mentioned, we've also received federal pandemic-based funding, CARES, which helped balance our budget in 2020. So projected revenues by category, the blue line under federal assistance in New York State match represents CARES funding plus STOA and other sources. So that happens to be by far our biggest source of revenue. On the far left, you'll see that we are optimistic that ridership will return in 2022. The gray bar there, perhaps not quite where we were in 2019. And we're hoping to be around 75% of where we were pre-pandemic ridership wise. Of course, our biggest fear is the new trend of working remotely will continue to affect ridership levels for all transit organizations for many years. As mentioned, STOA funding will likely drop due to hold harmless provision going away starting the second quarter of 2022, when STOA will be based on actual miles and riders and not on 2019's figures. So operating budget planning assumptions, like everyone else, TCAT is having trouble recruiting employees. In our particular case, hiring bus drivers has been extremely difficult. Transit agencies are up against an increase in the living wage, which is in Tompkins County, I believe, is up to about $15.37 an hour, I believe. The point here is we know that wages for TCAT skilled labor force will continue to rise in the coming years, especially if we want to successfully continue to recruit and retain bus operators. I hope I'm going to give enough people time to look over the slides. The cost of fuel is expected to go up, and the cost of parts is expected to go down, in part due to our new electric buses. And we expect that cost of fuel for TCAT will eventually be going down due to the purchase of more electric buses in the future. And we're moving right along. While you look at our 2022 capital plan, I'll let you look at that and I'll highlight some of our initiatives while we're doing that. In July, we were awarded a IURA grant for 8 new bus shelters in the city. We now have 7 battery electric buses in service throughout the county on various routes, and no major issues so far. Those are all working out really well for us. Transit Development Plan, or TDP, is nearly a conclusion. It's a restructuring of our system. The TDP happens once every 10 years. Our first mile, last mile program called T-Connect has been successful in the Lansing Etna area. And we started an additional T-Connect project in Dryden on August 9th. T-Connect, if you don't know it, provides on-demand service to parts of the community that are not supported by fixed route transit with 40-foot buses, providing transportation options to those who are underserved. As you look at the capital plan, you'll see that many of our initiatives and grant applications involve electric buses, including smaller electric buses, as we continue with our commitment towards an all-battery electric fleet by 2035. And of course, some of those smaller buses can be used in some of these areas that we're using first mile, last mile, and on demand. So it's all, the whole plan is coming in place here with both battery electric buses and trying to meet some of the equity issues in the county. The only other thing I have is one quick grant note. TCAT has applied for a US DOT RAISE grant, and our application involves smaller electric buses and community fast charging stations and a park and ride at TC3. Obviously, we're real concerned about park and ride coming in from that area. That's one of our biggest commuting areas coming into the city of Ithaca. And we thought it was a great idea to provide fast charging stations at TC3 and along with a park and ride, so community can use those charging stations, and TCAT can be there to pick up people and bring them in so they don't have to come all the way into the city, avoiding some of our traffic congestion and parking issues. And it's hopefully a win-win if we get this grant. So that is the end of our presentation. So Julie and I will take any questions you have.
Thank you, Scott. We have a question from Mike Lane.
Hi, Scott. How are you? Wondered, your presentation said that you had an agreement with Cornell for 1 year. Seems odd that it's only for 1 year to me. What kinds of issues are in flux there, or do they just don't know because of COVID what's going on?
Mike, that's a really good question. It's because we couldn't really reach an agreement of full. I mean, we negotiated back and forth basically with Cornell and myself and a few board members, and we really couldn't come up with a real good solution. So we thought that we would hash it over and for a year and extend just extend that contract and kind of talk it over and renegotiate here in a few months. So we're going to start working on that probably before the end of 2021. And the contract expires on June 30th of 2022 now, because it was extended 1 year. So we'll have some time to rehash and try to work an agreement out. So it's just basically giving us a little more time to work with the folks at Cornell.
Understand. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Annie?
Thank you. Scott, I just wanted to say thank you to you and to the staff that brought one of the electric TCAT buses to the Trumansburg Fair, to the Firepersons Parade a couple of weeks ago. They were really nice and gave me a tour and showed me some of the features of the bus. So
we've got a picture of you in the driver's seat, Annie.
That's right.
Yep.
But they only let me push the button to open the door. So
That's it.
I was limited.
Darn it.
Very limited. And the ramp and the cool hydraulic ramp. So that was really nice.
Your wheelchair ramp. Yep.
They've seen
Very
your
cool.
0 to
Thank you.
60 thing in your Tesla, Annie. That's why they didn't let you do anything else.
That would be a good reason, yes.
Anybody else? Thank you, Scott. And I just want to say, having sat on TCAT's board now for a couple of years, especially through 2020 and 2021, a period of unprecedented challenges and unpredictability that the folks at TCAT have really knocked themselves out to try to make things work as well as they possibly could. And I want to congratulate TCAT for being in as good shape as it is. Thank you.
Thanks, Deborah. Just make it end, will you? Appreciate that. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Good night. Okay, and I guess unless anybody has anything else they want to cover, we are done for tonight, and we will see you all again. What is it, next Thursday? Next Monday.
You mean for budget?
No, for, expanded budget committee. I'm losing track. We've had so many special meetings. Anyhow, I don't think I need to take a vote. We would all like to adjourn. Everyone.
And we do have a special meeting tomorrow, of course.